Welcome to Sewing Tips with Joy. I'm Joy Kent, and I've been sewing since I was 10 years old and developed a big passion for sewing. Through trial and error, through learning from others, and putting my tweak on things, I've developed a lot of sewing techniques. In this video series, I'm sharing these techniques with you. Today's technique is pinning patterns on fabric. You might say, Joy, this is a very easy thing to do. It's very basic. But 10, 15 years ago, or actually more than that, about 17 years ago, I was going to the Art Institute in Portland, Oregon, getting a degree in apparel design. I took couture classes because I already knew how to sew. And these couture classes really elevated my sewing techniques. In this class, the instructor said we had to use these pens. They are Swiss or Iris Swiss superfine pens. What's great about these pens is they are very fine and long. They go in and out of the fabric very easily. There's no snags whatsoever, which is really great for fine fabrics. I use these exclusively. The moment I got these pens and we're using them, every other pen was thrown away. Now, the next technique that I learned in this class was that putting your pins only in the seam allowance. This made sure that you had no pinholes within the body of the fabric. So putting all your pins in the seam allowances, you also had to consider one other thing, is the straight of the grain line. In most commercial patterns, the grain line stops about right there. So I recommend that you extend these grain lines all the way through the seam allowance. That way you can when putting on the straight of the grain, you're putting the pins in the seam allowance. So this first step in pinning, you want to make sure that your fabric is on the straight of the grain. In a past tip, I told you about this mat. It has all the grid lines. So I've put this fabric on the straight of the grain this way and then that way. Mostly that one went off, and that way I can ensure this silk charmeuse, which can be wiggly, is totally straight, because you want to make sure everything is on the straight of the grain because the fabric will drape better. So now we're going to pin. So you would put all your patterns out on to make sure they're placed properly. We're doing this only one for demonstration purposes. So I always start putting my pin at the bottom. That's just the way I do it. I don't think it really matters one way or the other. And then you measure it. Actually, we got to use the other side. You measure it, and you come up here and measure it, move the pattern so that it's at the right spot. Now, I don't put the pin up at the top of the straight of grain. I tend to put it in the transition area, because I pin in the transition areas. For this pattern, it would be the armholes, the bust line, the waistline, and then the bottom. And this bottom pin, I would tend to move over here. I tend to cut out a lot of things at once, and so pins are at a premium at my house. Now, if I had a longer pattern, I would put more pins in it to make sure it's stabilized. Now, the amount of pins you put in, I think, really depends on which instrument you use to cut. So I tend to use the rotary. I think I get the best quality of cutting out patterns with this. And so, because I can just go right next to it and go all the way down, and I have my hand to stabilize. Now using the scissors, I don't always have my hand to stabilize, and then also the quality of my cutting out is not as high. But if you like this, whatever works for you. So this is pinning the fabric, or pinning the pattern on the fabric technique. So thank you for watching this video. And as always, if you have any questions, please ask. If you have any comments, please share them with us. And if you have any variations of this technique, please share it with us, because we're all looking for ways to make sewing easier. And then finally, if you are struggling with any sewing technique, please tell me. I'll create a video or a series of videos to help you demystify it. I'm sure others are having the same struggle. By sharing, we can grow this passion for sewing. Thanks for watching this video. Happy sewing!